Hey everybody, what is up? What is up? It is me, Mike Vanderpool. I'm here today with the Make It Happen podcast, and I'm joined by a special guest, BJ Fink, who I made it happen just by reaching out to you on LinkedIn. I saw that you were into esports. I don't know who you were connected or how it got recommended, but I play in the esports space. I'm also a girl dad, and when I saw your profile, esports and girl dad, I'm like, I got to talk to this person. So BJ, thank you for coming on. Appreciate the time.
No, it's a pleasure, Mike. Yeah, it's funny how that happens. I think I've had quite a few interesting conversations or just, outreaches like this because I've got girl dad right in my little bio. So it's working wonders.
Yes. And we are here. I am here at the Toledo Tech Loft, the home of the Make It Happen podcast. You are in parts unknown, unless you like those. Who are you?
No, I'm here in Abingdon, Virginia. So down in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
And gearing for the snowstorm. So we will.
They're saying we could get a foot of snow. We'll see.
Oh, man. I don't want to jinx it, but like where we live here in Toledo region, it almost always goes above us or below us. We always kind of tend to stay on that line. Yeah. Lake Erie helps us out, but I hope you've got some provisions for what might be coming.
Dude, we went grocery shopping today. The storm's supposed to hit Saturday, so we got what we need.
Awesome. So you are the co-founder of Serendipity Esports. I'm really excited to hear about that. Organizational leadership in esports, I think, is something that, and the opportunities that esports affords, and what we need to create those types of communities. That's awesome. That's stuff I want to hear about. The girl dad stuff, obviously, we'll Marvel and the other media companies out there have been doing everything they can to get us girl dads and make us cry. And then US Esports, I'd also love to hear about as well, if those are all cool for you. But first and foremost, I'm going to start here. When did you start playing video games? What was your first game?
Ooh, so, man, my first video game, I'll see if I can remember what the name of it was. So I grew up, my dad's a pastor, and so video games weren't super common, right, for those of us. But we weren't allowed to have a console growing up. We got to have a family computer, and I think on a whim one time my dad bought this like motorcycle racing game. I couldn't even remember what it was now. It was like back in the early 90s. And so, I started playing that, and then they finally let us buy a couple of our own, and then I got to buy a Game Boy. It slowly worked its way up, and so then I learned how to take apart the family computer and do things, and that got me slowly into some IT stuff, and which works in esports. It's nice to have those skill sets, but
for sure,
yeah, it was just a silly little motorcycle racing game on the old PC. I think actually, you know what? No, there's one before that one. In the garage, they had an old computer that just ran on the DOS operating system with the big old 8.5-inch floppies, and we had Oregon Trail.
Let's go.
You slide that thing in, flip the switch down, and you dive dysentery in 5 minutes. Yeah.
There's a fascinating documentary about that movie, about how, the people that made it basically made zero money from that game. That was in every freaking school all across the country.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Man, that's wild. But yeah, I think that had to be it then.
So you're a little bit younger than myself, but we do share a little bit of similarity there. My mother was very much anti-video games. Even now, she's like, my kids will watch people like Zebra Gamer on YouTube. The people that are just playing the games. She's like, they're watching people play video games now. It's a spectator sport. Yeah. And she says, I can't believe they're just sitting there watching them play games. And I'm sitting there, well, you watch people play basketball and football. What's the difference?
Right? You do. Yeah. It's interesting how do you make that connection, and then that gets into a whole lot of things with competitive esports and working at universities and trying to even get programs started at universities, right? It's like, well, what do we do this? Well, again, you watch basketball, your players compete. It's different, but in that realm of it's a competition, it's standard in that sense, right?
That was one of the struggles I had out in the cornfields trying to get esports started. Was some of the folks didn't understand it, other than kids are wasting time playing video games.
Yeah.
And then it became sometimes an easy target when students weren't doing well. Oh, they're spending all their time playing video games.
Yep.
So the culture of what video games are and the opportunities in esports, I'm really looking forward to talking to you about that. But how did you get involved then in esports? What was like that journey from that Game Boy to where you're at with esports?
Yeah, and everybody's is different. Now, it'll be interesting in the next few years to see as some of these, students have, now done esports in college, maybe they even have an esports degree, but they're the first group that'll, grow up doing esports. Whereas all of us that kind of are in this realm right now, our stories of how we got into it are just all over the place and pretty random. I've done a lot of different jobs in my life from IT, and I spent 10 years in higher ed and doing things there, teaching, coaching women's collegiate soccer, working in IT, working at admissions, doing all this different stuff. And so between coaching and IT and these other things that I've done, my skills kind of all came together when esports fell into my lap. But it was a simple ask on the part of the administration when the campus gaming club, I was at Greenville University working at the time, and the current staff advisor who knew me, he didn't have time to be the advisor anymore. So he said, "Hey, BJ, do you want to do this? I know you like video games, and they're looking at maybe doing something extra with these computers. And I know you know how to build computers and do things." And so I was like, "All right, yeah, I could probably swing it." So I met with the gaming club, officers, and I said, "What do you guys want to do? What's the goal of this club? What are you interested in?" And I said, "Well, we really would like to get esports going." And that conversation was the 17-18 academic year. And so that's when I would have launched my first program at a university. And then I was there for a number of years and then moved to a Lewisburg College out in North Carolina, launched their program, designed their facility for them. Got that going. And in the meantime, I was doing a lot of consulting for high schools in Illinois, where I was at in the cornfields, right? Kind of in that same vein. But they were like, we don't, some of those high schools, like there was a high school of 100 students max, 9th through 12th grade, right? And they didn't have really any sports teams, but the whole school, like 30 to 40 people, almost half the school was on the esports team. And they were like, we got this thing going. And like, how do we keep it going? What do we replicate? How do we do this? And so it's fascinating to kind of see that, and fascinating to do esports in different regions of the country too, because video games are different based on the your demographic background. Did you grow up in the cornfields playing baseball? You might play Call of Duty. Did you grow up in the city? Were you low income? Whatever you're at, you might only have access to consoles. That tells you what games you. So it's different all over the place, and kind of fascinating to see the pieces and how they fit together in different areas. And then, so that's how esports started with me. And then I jumped out of higher ed when we moved here into Virginia, because I needed to work remote at that point. And it's hard to do a lot of higher ed on campus when you have to work remote. So I got into consulting and met a few people and decided to launch a couple different brands and work with a few different people. But it was about 2.5 years ago now, we launched Serendipity Esports and kind of really started to, the goal being to help a lot of these coaches, right? We've been through this. I've understood it. I get where you're at and the struggles you're having, and I know how to do a couple extra things and build some of this structure. And so we set out to help in that regard. How can we help build standardization? And it's all through the vein of like, hey, do you need to order some new gaming chairs? Do you need a custom shoutcasting desk? Do you need a facility redesign? And now I've built a software for esports administration on that side as well. But it's what can we help you do? And not break your bank doing it, and help bring structure to all these different programs kind of across the country. And of course, the whole time you're, if we're doing a facility or we're building something for you, like you can have basically as many meetings with me as you want. We can talk about stuff and we can help you. How do you recruit? How do you do these things? Let's build a structure and give you processes and methods. And that kind of goes all the way up through even USA Esports. So I'm a founding board member there. We're working on building out the national sanctioning body to run esports across the country. And that's kind of this connection point, right, between all the different ecosystems, is we've got to get it from K-12 through college and then to this national body and build kind of this unifying structure.
Hey, folks. Thank you for listening to the Make It Happen podcast. I want to take a quick break and thank the home of the podcast, the Toledo Tech Loft. Are you looking for the perfect spot to bring your team together and spark new ideas? At the Toledo Tech Loft, they have exactly what you need. They offer 3 well-equipped conference rooms that are perfect for your business meetings and collaborative sessions. The meeting spaces are designed to help your team connect and create in a comfortable, inspiring environment. When it's time for a larger gathering, step into their workshop room, bathed in natural light from big windows and filled with a fantastic vibe. It's the ideal space for hosting networking events, workshops, and all those things that help you and your organization make it happen. Plus, nestled in the heart of downtown, you'll be surrounded by great restaurants, great scenery, and the vibrant energy the city has to offer. Come see how the Toledo Tech Loft can be your next home base. Let's go back and make it happen. This is perfect. That's exactly the conversation I want to have. So, we started, I probably got a little bit of a 2-year later start than you, but really very similar, right? My design class, designed and built a game room on campus to try to, it was community college, so trying to keep students there, made it the student services. I'm a video gamer. I started playing with the students. They're all into Smash Brothers. I was like, hey, what do you all want to do? They're like, well, we should have a tournament. So we had a tournament. We brought about 200 people to the Archibald, Ohio, which is northwest Ohio. We had the first people door came from an hour and a half away in Indiana. The winner of the tournament came from 2 hours from Cleveland. I was like, holy smokes, this thing is pretty powerful for capturing an audience. And then at that event, our president at the time announced that we were going to do six esports scholarships before we even had a real esports team. And he was like, Mike, make it happen.
That's a benefit right there. I mean, that's a rare occasion.
I was very lucky. He got it. He understood it, right?
Yeah.
Very forward thinking, and all of that was pre-COVID, which led to some challenges. But one of the more rewarding things for me was outside of the nursing program, which was the biggest program on campus and people were required to be there. That esports lab was the most card swiped used facility on the campus. We got it built, right? So for me, I've been in it and I kind of see it, translating that to other people so that they can kind of see the wider vision. And the one thing that I've noticed, I'd love your opinion on this more than anything else, is in collegiate esports, I think because we don't have enough consistency flowing down through high schools and even into your K-12, these students don't have the same kind of understanding of how to practice and even those skills up like we do with baseball, football, everything lacrosse, where people are starting at 3 years old in those things, organized sports, right?
I know it. Yeah, and you're spot on here, because it's really like when you're working with, a lot of coaches don't understand this, and it depends on your background and what you're used to understanding. So like I would say there's a few different types of esports coaches and directors out there, right? You give them these like personas, like we might in the corporate world. It's like, hey, this is my customer persona. This guy's the sales type. So there's like this sales director, and their job, all they do is like go out there and sell the program, sell the school, but they don't really manage it much. They don't, coach any of the games, anything. Then you have strictly kind of the IT professional, right? You've got the IT guy, and he knows all the computers. He probably plays some video games, but has no idea how to coach a team or do team dynamics or any of this stuff. And then you typically have the gamer coach who knows the game, like maybe one or two really well, understands how to play it, but still has never been trained in team dynamics. So across all these things, the one thing you're missing is somebody to build actual teams, right? And so it adds to that inconsistency across the spectrum here. And all these teams are being coached or trained differently. And even universities that hire a former professional gamer, like that person still they don't quite understand the psychology behind players, how they behave, what they do, and how to build cohesive units. And so it's different. And so these players that come from these backgrounds where they never had that, they didn't play sports from the time they were 3 or 4. And you've got players of all different skill levels, right? And you all of a sudden have a group. You've got to break them down to build them back up again. You've got the guy that's really good at this game. He's like, I don't want to play with these people. They're not as good as I am. They're going to slow me down. And you're like, what sports team? If that was the case, your coach would get on to you so fast right there. Yeah. But I often see the opposite, where these coaches say, well, I'm not going to make this good player show up to practice because they don't want to play with these players outside of the game itself. And because if I make him show up, he's not going to play for me anymore. And you're like, right there is this paradox of you have to instill boundaries and kind of this rule set and make it act like a team. Then it will function like a team.
Good. Yeah, good. I mean, there's so much that you brought up to unpack, right? Like, and even I think one of the foundational things for the people in the audience who don't understand esports at that level, esports isn't just one game,
right?
Esports is almost more like the Olympics, right? Like you have games that are 1-versus-1. You've got games that are kind of 2-versus-2, 3-versus-3, 5-versus-5. It's like a basketball team plus a volleyball team plus a tennis team that's singles and doubles. And it's just to try to find somebody who understands how to lead a team, how to play the games, plural, and then how to function within the academic system as well.
Yeah.
That is a unicorn. And it's not typically one person does not have all those skills.
Right. And, for university athletics department, so if anybody there's watching is trying to figure out how to navigate all this, the best way I found to make it stick with other traditional sports coaches or athletic directors that are trying to figure out is it's a track team, right? You would never hire just one coach for your track team. You've got your distance coach, you've got your sprinting coach, you've got your throwing coach, you've got your strength and conditioning coach, because one person can't do it all.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, why should we spend more money hiring extra esports staff? And they're like, this is why.
Mm-hmm. Well, and here's the question though, chicken versus egg, right? So if I'm going to hire 3 or 4 people, I've got to have the enrollment that supports that. Then somebody's got to be focused on recruitment. Like if you were to start a program at the collegiate level, how do you start, right? Where do you start?
It's it's interesting. And I would say my advice is, because every university is different, right? But their needs, where they recruit, the types of students, that's all different across the board. If it's a really religious school, you might be able to only play Rocket League. If it's, like even the games you play it's not always a given. It's not a guarantee. So the one thing that is always the same though, and because people often forget this, a higher ed institution, as much as we cringe when we say it, is a business, right? And so your best bet, number one, is to focus on it, because we all want to jump in and coach all the video games and all this stuff. We're like, oh, this is fun, this is cool, and you're right, it is. But if you're starting a program, you have to bring in the students, you have to bring in the money, and if you cannot do that, first and foremost, your program will not succeed. And it's an unfair challenge, because if I'm talking with like big name universities, big public D1 schools, they don't have to recruit. They're just like, they have $180,000 a year budget and they just get students from campus.
Yeah.
Because, there's 70,000 kids on campus. So it's not a big deal. It's not. But for those small schools, right, they're looking for extra ways to boost enrollment, especially in today's climate. And so if you're working for one of those, and they often can't pay the most, but they're the ones that are saying, if you can recruit 10 extra people next year, we'll bump you this much. If you can recruit this more, get the metrics down, get those kids in the door. Do that first, which is oftentimes the less fun part. But as any startup, right, if you're working at a business, you got to do all the not fun stuff first to get to the fun stuff.
Yeah, good point. So let's kind of back up a little bit, and again, some of the things you brought up, I've noticed, and I'll just throw out some things I've noticed in the space, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Like the high school level. High school programs sometimes live and die by a director of technology. Somebody like us, probably around our age, who thinks games are cool, maybe has played Call of Duty or something, is like, sees the opportunity, but they're busy re-imaging Chromebooks and everything else, and fighting the security things that they're dealing with all day, every day that we don't know about. So for a lot of what I've seen, the consistency, because we don't have these systems, this ecosystem in place, sometimes it will be like, reinventing the wheel over and over and again, a lot of wasted resources, and the sustainability of the programs at the lower levels, I think, is what's probably hurting us a little bit at the collegiate level. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right, and there needs to be this kind of, right now, esports at a lot of like middle schools or things like that, right? It's an after school club, and if you think about it in this traditional sports sense too, and in a lot of people hate thinking of esports in traditional sports sense, because they're like, it's totally different. And it is and it isn't, right? The way that you build something, like there's a foundational layer, and that's can be across the board in a lot of different industries, right? There's always this foundational layer. So for esports, it's an after school club, right? And so it's volunteer hours. It's usually not a paid position a lot of the time. And that's where you run into that idea that it kind of fails. Like if you take it middle school and traditional sports, well, most middle schools don't really have a lot of sports teams that the school sponsors, right? It's normally once you get into high school. There are some middle schools that do this. Just depends on your state and your leagues and stuff, but typically it's more in the high school zone or junior high if you have that, where these sports teams that are fully school funded come into play. Your middle school and your elementary, it's all rec leagues a lot of the time, right? That's where you're going.
Yeah.
So if esports is going to build this team dynamic from this early age, we can't rely on K to 12 so much. We need to actually, well, YMCAs are starting it up. Whereas the rec leagues, one of the things I never got around to doing, but it was starting before I left the last institution I was at, was working with the city's park and rec league to allow them to use our facility to create a league.
Gotcha.
Right. And so we have to think of it, how do all these kids get to these team dynamics and all these other avenues? And how can we, in a way, replicate that? Because that's what parents are used to. That's what these kids are used to doing. And so it's an easy way to get them in the door to build that structure without trying to reinvent the wheel. And again, like rely solely on this overworked IT guy that only works for the county technically in this like small school district, but he's trying to get this thing going over here, but he doesn't have time to, it can be a mess.
So maybe in like regions where you have like 3 or 4 schools, the reality of those 3 or 4 small schools having a team isn't likely, right? But
yeah,
all together as a county regional team, rec style team might make more sense. But then again, it's how do you find competition and that other
right. It's got to you got to start this grassroots level, and it takes people to be involved in that to really prop it up. And I kind of always take this approach of once you get the local community involved in that, and it's not siloed in some after school club, it's not siloed in some weird corner of something somewhere.
some closet.
Yeah, right. The community gets involved, and then we chain all these local communities together. That's your foundational level. Then they build it up from there. And then, it's the same with on the professional scene. They try to go so top down, so top heavy, put the money in it. People care, but you know what? Like traditional sports, we care about the team. A lot about the players, but like if those players leave your team, you're still going to follow your team. You're not following that player and picking a new favorite team. Esports is the opposite. You follow that player wherever they go. The teams don't matter, right? They're trying to matter, but you have to actually get like what matters is like I live in, New York City. So I'm either a Giants or a Jets fan, right? But esports doesn't have that. So you have to build that. And a lot of these tier 2 professional teams are starting to build that. They're getting in their communities. They're connecting with community colleges, with the elementary schools to help curriculums and create these kind of funnels that build this little local community esports hub. And then we can connect all those, build regional conference leagues for semi-pro teams, and then eventually get to this big professional league. Just like in baseball and other sports, you have your AAA teams, things like that, but it's all part of the same ecosystem. We have to build that, start at the ground level, and build it up. And that's how we get there. It's a lot of work though.
So I want to ask the question. I got a great question, but I think I need to save it. I'm going to save that. We're teasing up for later. So from your perspective, and when we talk about sports, traditional sports, we'll say, the players that you see on the field playing the game are a small portion, right?
Right.
My argument has been, esports as a business, you've got a wider swath of people who aren't necessarily even the shoutcasters. That's only a small fraction of what it would if we had a fully functioning esports ecosystem. People that would be involved in making it happen behind the scenes, right? The opportunities for the media part of it, not just in front of the camera, all the media people potentially behind the camera. Because I think esports as a spectator sport is as people get older, that's going to become again more popular because that's what our kids are already starting to do, right? Watch,
right.
And they may not be the best Rocket League player in the world, but they can find a satisfaction just like we do, or I do, and people in the traditional sports community, of watching somebody who excels at this do things that they can't do, even though they appreciate the game at that level, right?
Yeah.
How are you seeing like that opportunity and cultivating that opportunity of the business side of what esports might be? Or should we not even worry about that at this level of where we're at with the ecosystem?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I would often say that's a better side to worry about than the purely competition part, because you can like on the all these structural pieces, right? So I guess anytime you're going to ask me a question, I'm always going to lean on the structure side of it. How do we build something to make it work, right? And a lot of that comes. I was a history major in college, and I actually was going to pursue archaeology, so I'm always fascinated at drilling down and finding what made something happen or what happened to this place, right? And so I kind of bring that into my perspective. It's the business side is actually number one, where the initial revenue is going to come to prop up the competitive side.
Mhm.
It's where people learn the skills to do broadcasting, to manage events, to manage a team. It's like traditional sports. You have sports management degrees. You might have a coaching master's. All these skill sets that people are learning in the peripherals around just competing in the game itself. In traditional sports, right? The team is there, but somebody's got to manage that entire stadium. Somebody's managing, all the broadcasting and the announcing and just the physical therapists, all this stuff. Like, there's so many pieces that go into this. And so esports tried to prop up the full competitive side and just focus on that without providing a lot of the structure that was behind the scenes that would actually facilitate growth, and making sure, that those players felt taken care of and that, they could get paid, and that, the tournament winnings didn't get lost in limbo somewhere between the tournament promoter and the, team accountant and all this stuff. Right. And I think we need these degrees, and I'm always going to be a fan of education in this regard, right? People talk a lot about, well, with AI and all this stuff, when what's higher ed really doing these days, and it's not giving me the skills I need. And I say that there's a difference. I've seen a lot of people now out in the world doing different things. There's multiple paths, right? Everybody has their own path, so higher ed's not the only path. But one thing it does teach that is missing, especially when you just go this certificate or training route for certain things that you want, is this practice of critical thinking and developing this. In esports kind of skipped that step. All these other sports and industries, right? They started in dirt fields. They built around it. They figured out, what do people like? Why do they like watching us? What does it take to actually play this sport? How do we even play it? Are we moving to a grass field, right? What are these steps that we're building towards? And esports was just like, let's just go all out and see what happens. And so I really think all these peripheral, the business side of the shoutcasting, and learning how to support a business is really foundational to making esports work.
Okay. So now I'm going to ask my question, right? And then I want to get into more about Serendipity Esports here. What does the ideal ecosystem look like for us in the esports space? If you could right now say, I'm going to grant you one wish, and you can say, boom, here it is. This'll be what we need. What would that be? What would it look like?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So I would lean on an interconnected ecosystem from, the elementary school through the pro scene. So it needs to be interconnected. It needs to have a separation from a publisher.
Can you explain that a little bit? Separation from the publisher?
Yeah. So think of soccer, football, basketball. What if the company that made the basketballs controlled how the entire sport worked?
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Right. That would be so weird. Right? They'd be like, we get all the money from it. You can only use this one color basketball. You can't. I don't know. It would go crazy. So publishers.
And you're talking about the game publishers, like
game publishers. Right. And that's good to clarify. So the game publishers, they built the game. They've manufactured the football, right? But at that point, it's now the sports teams and their fans that take it and go crazy, right? And they do what they want to do. And so the problem is, though, that the publishers have to make money. The football manufacturer, all you need to do is buy the football continually, and they're fine with it, right? So, and they've got structured rules that they change a little bit every year in traditional sports, right? They update, they do things. But the bones of the sport are there, right? And for video games, every company, every game they make, they have to make revenue on that. That's their business model. And so esports only exists for them as long as it's a revenue stream. When it ceases to be a revenue stream, if tomorrow people are just like, I'm over League of Legends, that game gets shut down. Anybody that built their career on that is gone. Mm-hmm. Any business that built their platform, their software on connecting to Riot's API to pull game stats, you're dead in the water. You have no business model. And so the entire esports ecosystem right now has been built on top and is contingent upon that game surviving and the publisher deciding that that game is continue to be made. Right. And that's a very risky bet.
Yeah. Okay. So
we have to create tournaments that play those games, but aren't dependent on that. And so I think, and there's a couple like-minded individuals, so an interconnected ecosystem that's genre-based, not game-based, because if you play Call of Duty and Counter-Strike and Battlefield, right, they all have little bit different mechanics, or Rainbow Six even, right, all a little bit different mechanics, but it's a first-person shooter type game. And so it's like in a traditional sport, right? If the guy, to your left gets injured or falls while you're in the middle of doing whatever, whether it's soccer, basketball, football, you have to fill that gap right now, right? Esports, we're like, let's just stay in our lane and I just play Call of Duty and I don't do anything else. And so you lose flexibility, number one. You also, again, lose this adaptability skill set. So if we make it more genre-based, you're going to make contracts worth more for players, longevity in careers, because you're not dependent on a one game mode or one game surviving. And it allows the publishers to kind of continue, in a sense, making new games while allowing players to adapt to them without losing the whole point of their career at this point. And I think a further separation, if we can figure it out, needs to still happen so that, but I think genre-based is kind of the best way to start moving towards.
Okay, so genre-based, meaning it's a first-person shooter or it's a 5-on-5 kind of. Oh, that's still
yeah. Maybe you're a sports game guy. You play Madden 2KN. Yeah. I want to say FIFA, but EAFC.
So
yeah.
Okay, and foundationally, that's because the relationships with the publishers. Some of these publishers feel like they're like esports, and some of them feel like they treat it like I don't know, more of a pain than actually something that's helping them.
Yeah, right. Because they think, well, I gotta continue with this audience and support these teams, and so like I have to continually give money to these tournaments so that people watch and want to play our game a little bit more. But it's not connected. So like 2K, for example, the 2K League disappeared for NBA 2K. They revamped it, and they're catering more to content creator leagues and competitions because they want content creation and entertainment is what makes money, not the competitive side.
Okay.
We think you're going to start to see that more because the publishers have realized, all this investment in esports that we hit the bubble, it kind of collapsed a bit. We're in this esports winter, as they might say on the professional side. They're realizing that from the publisher perspective, and they're saying, where can we make up that revenue gap?
Okay. So the perfect ecosystem is the publishers are making enough money for them to keep doing what they're doing, while our teams are being a little more flexible by being genre-based versus title-based.
Yeah, I think for now, that's what I can kind of see as this middle ground, this compromise between the two sides to keep it moving forward.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so where were we before that? I'm sorry, I'm going to sidetrack you a little bit. We were talking the ideal, right? So that's part of the ideal. So what does it look like then maybe in the esports arena or the lab or the spaces where the games are being played from our from our 5-year-olds to our professional players?
Yeah. And so, right, if you're going to do, genre-based, it's kind of, you start there at this early age and you teach them skill sets and what it means to play certain types of games. And then they get used to, being adapted. It's like if you're going to study science, you got to know chemistry, physics, biology, right? You're going to do different things with those, but they're all interconnected. And anything we really do, right? You're not just stuck in one lane. Usually there's cross-discipline, right? In a sense, on the academic side, I'm a cross-discipline person, right? I do multiple different things, or I connect the dots here. But I think, you should absolutely continue to have those K through 12 clubs where you can and where they function. We need to move to more of those rec leagues and making it more community-wide for the entire town or city where you live to make it noticeable or visible. Because the other side with collegiate...
I think that's super important, right? I think the visibility of seeing these kids finding success or finding enjoyment, finding their thing and have an opportunity to demonstrate their thing and have attention and reward for their thing helps everything else that they're doing rise up, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. It does. And so you've kind of, again, you see this breakdown where like they wanted these audiences in esports to support them, But the average person will jump in for about 5 minutes to watch this live stream, and then they'll leave. They'll come back maybe 30 minutes later to see what's now happening, but they don't care about the entire match. They care about the pieces. And if you drive by a football stadium, you're like, look at that cool stadium. Where's an esports arena that you're going to drive by and you notice that that's what it is, right? Or a college campus that has one, but like the people that live right next to the college campus in their houses, they don't know esports exists. They don't know you have one. It's not visible because it's not this grand arena yet that is there. So visibility is incredibly low, even though we feel like it's high because we all live in the online world.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I noticed even with Smash tournaments where like the biggest crowd is there at the beginning, and by the time the most exciting match is happening at the end, there's 5 people that are basically waiting to get done so they can get people a ride home, right?
Yeah. So what that's telling you is the community is strong, right? People go there to be with like-minded people, and then after a couple hours, they're like, okay, I'm gonna take my break.
Yeah, and I can watch this on a VOD later, right?
Yeah, the live factor is not nearly as important.
For sure. Okay, wow. So much too. So that's kind of the and I think just to button that up, like the base K-12 folks, that space, I think we also need to be the foundations of how do you communicate and how you work together as a team, right?
Yeah.
And how you handle adversity and how you handle some of the heat and temperature in the room when things don't go your way, right? There's a lot that we can teach there that would then translate to them throughout their entire career inside of esports, right?
Yeah, and that's
or a career outside of just a career in general.
Anywhere, right? Yeah, those are pretty important skills across the board. And the part of the struggle, the problem that we have, the obstacle that we have that didn't happen necessarily in other industries, other sports was, if you go back to the early 2000s, right? Microsoft and the Xbox, one of their ads said, "Are you ready to ruin somebody's day?" So they've built this gaming toxicity into our mindset. So you get all these players who've been taught how to behave like this, and you try to put them on a team, and they're toxic in this sense. And so at the early age, it's really important to teach them those skills now to flip, the narrative.
I don't want to name names, but I've heard that talking about specific titles, like, "Ooh, this is a toxic title," right?
Yeah.
And as somebody who we can get into the girl dad stuff right here, somebody who has a daughter who is, dude, she is awesome at Fortnite, and I'd love her to play and stream online. I struggle, right? And that's when we started esports at the community college. One of the very first things I did was this space has to be open and welcoming to everybody because someday my daughter will play on this team. And the internet, computers just in general, throughout its history, have been known for some of this. I mean, it's built into it. It feels like, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, the difference in virtual accountability versus in-person or IRL accountability, right?
Yeah, there we go. In real life for the old kids out there.
Right. And so that's where esports has had to overcome, or still needs to, this dynamic that was built into this, because they sold more. It's the publishers and the console makers. There again, it's there for revenue. So they're going to say these things and do these ads, regardless of what happens with us and this stuff. They just need to make more money. That's their goal. And so, that's business. But because of that, esports has a harder time building something because we're stuck to it.
So what you're saying is we need really like an open source title to take off for esports.
Yeah, an open source title that's going to have the same rule set for 30 years.
Okay. I know people that can make that happen.
StarCraft, right? I don't know.
Competitive. I mean, can we do competitive Minecraft that's not PvP and Bed Wars? I don't know if that's possible.
It may be. Let's go back and we'll open up Age of Empires again and really get that cracking.
Okay, so ground level, that's cool, or entry level, that's cool. What about like what I'm defining kind of as the North Star, right? This professional / semi-professional, this place where we've got jobs for people, right? What does that look like? What does it look like now, and what does it need to look like?
Yeah, so on the professional team side, right, there's of course multiple versions of this. You've got your big international teams, right, and they're global, and that's how they found success. What's a little bit different from other sports, they moved into this, but like sports started as sports, and then they added an entertainment arm, right? Esports teams or organizations, they're entertainment companies that started a competitive league.
Okay.
right? So you got it's everything is kind of backwards in the way that it operates. So on the international level, you're catering to the globe. You have enough pull in the percentages and the ratio of the entire global population to support your team. But in the US, all of our US teams are smaller, regional. Even our bigger professional teams that we, might be kind of global, they're not as, they don't really have a big US following. A lot of the following is international. And so there's
In soccer, it sounds like a little bit, right? Like,
yeah, right. You kind of go that route. And so the jobs for professional esports teams and things like that right now, they're a small. So if you were like walk into a professional esports team, they're not going to have a huge staff. There's not a lot of people. They have their coaches and their team manager overall, but then they might have one guy in charge of all of marketing, a couple content creators. And like, so on the professional side, the staffs are pretty small. There's not a lot of jobs open and available in this space yet. It's kind of a who you know versus what you know scenario. But where it's yeah.
Which is interesting because it is media production. If you notice, like, Ben Stiller hangs out with Owen Wilson and they're in all the same movies together and they're using a lot of the same crew because that's just who they're comfortable working with, right?
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's really kind of a similar dynamic. And on the competitive player side, you're retired by 22 most of the time, if not even before. And usually you skipped kind of college at this point, and then you get dropped off. You might be a team manager for a year or two, but then you're gone. So the longevity is not there, and that's where the genre base maybe comes in to help make that longevity better. But the right below that, so if you go even to like the collegiate level, of course, that ecosystem is really trying to build stability and structure across the board. It's kind of the perfect incubator for it because it sits right in the middle. It's this linchpin. If you can get it right here, then it can trickle down and it can build a foundation up, right? And so that's why I really love university esports in this regard, even though there's just a lot of struggle in higher ed, period. But the tier 2 professional market, that's where we're going to see stabilization.
So define what is tier 2.
So you think Cloud9, G2 Esports, all these 100 Thieves, that's tier 1, right?
Okay.
Tier 2, if you haven't heard of them, Damascus Gaming, right, out of El Paso, Texas. Core Gaming out of Las Vegas, Nevada. There are these teams that are, tier 2, but the tier 2 teams, now don't mistake that for tier 2 town.
Okay.
Different, right? It usually is kind of just this funding and how big this organization is, because like Damascus Gaming has the top 10 fighting game guys, right? They've got, Command Station, if you know her, that's her gamer tag, but Halo Infinite, she was top, like won the championships, right? Like they've got talent, and it's where these people can live and where they can be themselves, and where they know what's going on in that ecosystem. But what they're doing, like in El Paso, for example, is trying to connect with the Chamber of Commerce, connect with the community colleges. They've worked with like a group called Squid Academy, for example, to get into the schools to build curriculum around esports and do things in the K-12 market, so that you start in K-12, you might go to some of these community colleges, and Damascus Gaming is building their network, their pipeline, their regional focus, and the city's getting behind it. When the city gets behind it and you're visible, you start to build a following that cares because you're in their city, you're propping up their ecosystem, and you build these community versions of this, and you get a real, truly like a city team, right? Overwatch League tried to do city teams, but nobody knew what esports still really was on the general population side. They did, like, you're just thrusting this new team upon me. I didn't even know what this thing is. Like it, and so there's no connection. The storytelling isn't there. Yeah. But if you start right with these tier 2 teams that are trying to build something, and the goal here would then be to take El Paso and this like team from Las Vegas and these other cities and build a Southwest regional league for professional players. And then you do a Southeast, you do a Northeast, a Northwest, a Midwest, and then you combine all those into a truly national professional league.
Okay. Yeah, I joke that we, like the whole what's Jackie Moon, what is that movie? Semi-pro, right? Like those semi-pro that kind of cultivate around a small old city like Flint and then bubble up, or either bubble up and or get just assimilate, absorbed into a
But that's where the jobs are right now. If you're looking for somewhere where you can start and grow and build, and the job market is kind of ripe to like really put you in that zone, tier 2 market is going to provide that initial stabilization for the industry on that side.
And that's shameless self promotion here for why I think Toledo has got a good opportunity for that, right? We have 2 minor league, we've got a minor league hockey team and a minor league baseball team a few blocks from me. We've got a lot of the potential right now. Bringing that together, is that something where like where Serendipity Esports would come into play to help? Maybe like if a region said, "Hey, we want to go tier 2 and make this happen," is that something you would help with?
Yeah, right. And so that's kind of what we use. I would say the procurement aspect of your gaming chairs. Let's design you a studio or a custom shoutcasting desk. Right, those are the assets we use to help build something. Right, we get you in the door. We help start something. Build even the space can build community. Right, so even if you build it like the right way, it's going to function better. People build these block rooms for esports, and they just the rows of computers, and they're like, that's not fostering community. Right. You want to even build a space that does that. So you start there and then we'll work through it with Serendipity, right? Whatever the need is, whatever the level of esports you're at, to say, hey, this is how you want to connect with your community. And I brought before I started Serendipity, my consulting service was called Radical Esports, and I still foster this as part of who I am or what I bring to the table. And Radical is research, awareness, development, community leverage. Right. So you take these, you start with your research. What are you actually trying to accomplish? Where are you at? What's your, it's your market research, your feasibility study type stuff, and understanding the esports ecosystem or the appetite for it where you're at. And then you build awareness, right? Because if you don't build awareness, it doesn't matter what you build, it's not going to happen. And you develop
town, but if nobody knows you have it, you're not going to sell it.
Exactly. And you then develop your space, your teams, whatever you're building. And then you activate the community that you've done all this awareness with, and then you leverage your current resources to then catapult everything kind of together into what your goals are.
Awesome. So who are like the ideal people that you want to work with at Serendipity, or ideal organizations or systems?
Yeah. So we work with, our mostly universities and some private like arenas, right? A lot of the time. And in those private arenas, there's a lot of the smaller ones that are really trying to do this community focused mindset and bring in people and players just to have somewhere to be, kind of a modern, it's a modern day arcade, right? That we're all used to seeing, or we kind of have this idea, but you're taking that and adding a structured layer to it. And you could do that based on different methods of where you're at. So, there's a private arena down in Florida where the guy was a former like animator, right? And computers and AI are kind of taking that away, but people want to learn these real skills to do different things. And so he's tying esports and animation together, how you can foster something, right? So there's always this extra layer that esports can provide that a lot of traditional sports can't. And so we want to work with people that really want to do something in their community to build foundational, sustainable, revenue generating esports, not necessarily entertainment companies.
So have you seen any type of these esports arenas where, they have the high-end computers, they've got to have a network, media production being a part of this? Have you seen any of these places leverage like training around some of those things as well? Like, hey, this is an esports facility from this time to this time, but we also have maybe some computer network training or some of those other technical skills.
I'll do a shout out to Davin Jackson down in Atlanta. He's got a small facility called Alpha Esports and Technologies, and he teaches cybersecurity through this, right?
Okay.
So, which is that's a huge career opportunity right there, starting out young. And so he leverages that. And he tries to connect with schools in the area and do some things, with esports and have teams and leagues, but also teaching, right, cybersecurity, something that's very real. It's behind the scenes, but like, that's going to be important to esports regardless, because we operate online. So if our cybersecurity practices aren't great, then that's not going to work for you. And they're honestly, for production, the best that I've seen for teaching people production behind the scenes and how this works is the university ecosystem. They want to reach their alumni, their fans, and they want to build something and teach these practical skills. And a lot of universities have already had like broadcast, or journalism degrees or media production, and they can translate that into esports and really build something on that and kind of create this interconnected, media career track that, wherever you might need to go in media, because it's all kind of moving together. You might go into journalism, you might be into broadcasting, you might go into esports, you might go into photography, but it's all clashing in this one digital realm now, right? Where it doesn't matter what kind of degree you got in that. You might be doing all of it. You might be, who knows?
Yeah, you need to be a generalist if you're going to be in media, I'd argue, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so I think the universities, honestly, in their arenas and the programs that they're building or are doing production, the private arenas that are out there, maybe doing some rec leagues and different things like that, are operating kind of as the arcades. They haven't cracked the code on teaching broadcasting and production just yet, because it's the revenue model, just like an arcade, is pay to play, right? And so how do they devote time and resources to training when they can't yet get that bottom line quite stable on the pay to play anymore?
Yeah, interesting. So, man, so we didn't even talk about really a lot of girl dad stuff, but I don't know, man. This is, dude, it's 50 minutes. It feels like freaking 5. This is like,
It's been
I appreciate it. Well, let's do this. Let's leave them wanting more.
all right.
But before we get into like how people to actually get in contact with you, and of course we'll have the links to all that stuff down below. Is there anything else that we kind of left off here that, as part of this conversation, that you want to mention?
Ooh. And honestly, we've talked around it, and we've said a lot of different things. And I think kind of just that core thing I would want people to keep doing is keep believing, keep dreaming in esports, but don't forget that it has to have a foundation, right? We built a whole generation of dreamers, and it's amazing. But a lot of the dreamers forget that you got to build something on the ground floor first. So we want to do that. We want to dream, but we want to build something that lasts.
Awesome. Well, Brian, this has been phenomenal. Serendipity Esports, how do people get a hold of you if they're interested in making this happen at their universities or in their communities?
Yeah, absolutely. My email, bfink@serendipityesports.gg. Find me on LinkedIn. My Discord is Papa Bear Fink. Changed that once I had my first kid.
Awesome. Okay, I was going to ask where it came from, but
Yeah. I was like, man, I had my gamer tags, and it was like part of my identity. But like, what's my identity now? It's like I'm a dad, and I'm a girl dad, so I'm just gonna lean into it hard, right? So yeah, find me on Discord, Papa Bear Fink, LinkedIn, my email there. Man, what other methods? I feel like there's like 50 methods these days. You can't ever remember them all. Those would be the main ones. Hit me up there.
Awesome. Yes. And this is great. Again, as somebody who has been involved in esports, not at the level you have, this has been phenomenal. I've learned a freak ton. What we need are more people like you in the space, helping people like me in the space do these things inside of our communities. Because somehow, some way, I believe the opportunity is there to use these video games, air quotes, right? As we're going to serve the ice cream before the vegetables, right? We can use these kids like to get them into the space, and then teach them some of the life skills along the way, just like we've done with traditional sports. And I think this is a space where we have a whole bunch of immense talent that doesn't necessarily get the attention or rewarded for having its thing, sometimes even looked down on because it's their thing. I really think that this is a place where if we lean into as a community, we can definitely do some positive stuff in workforce development and just building cool people doing cool things.
There you go. I think so. And yeah, like you said, it sounds like Toledo's primed for something cool at the same time. So we'll see where it goes.
We're gonna have a conversation after we cut through 5 here. So, Brian, I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Serendipity Esports. Find them on LinkedIn. Find them on the links below. And appreciate what you're doing. And we will just continue to do cool things and keep making it happen.
There you go. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, folks.